A lot of things to dive into. Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic City. One takeaway is, I guess, Dave, the big thing for me was that Howie admitting that Joe Douglas is going to have a lot of say in the draft, and I think that might put some people at ease who think that Howie is that maybe might be one of his weaker areas. I don't know what to think about Howie in terms of the draft, because it's been so murky whether Andy ran drafts and Chip was running drafts, but Joe Douglas being a big face now in the rebuild of this Philadelphia Eagles team.
Yeah, but I'm still a little bit skeptical because Howie also made it clear that he has the final say. So, granted, they would do well to respect Joe Douglas's opinion and what he thinks about certain players, and you would think that they would just go with his recommendation. But Howie also said this is going to be a collaborative effort, and that he made it pretty clear that Joe reports to him too. So I'm a little bit skeptical of how the draft is really going to go.
All right, so obviously this team, and he said it, we're not even close to improving everything. They've got a long ways to go. But are they, in the NFL, in today's NFL, are they years away? Are they a couple of players? I mean, we saw the Giants go from a historically bad defense to one of the best defenses in the league. I don't know that anybody thought the Giants looked like they were close to being a playoff team at the end of last year. So are the Eagles just, hey, a couple of moves here and there, and they're right back in the playoff mix? Or do you think this team is really hurt from the Kelly era?
No. I think they're pretty close. They do need to make some moves clearly with, like, say, corner and wide receiver. But like you mentioned, Dallas rebuilt relatively quickly, as did Dallas. I mean, they're the number one seed after not even making the playoffs last year. So with a rookie quarterback and a rookie running back, by the way. So I don't think that they're that far away, to be honest with you. I mean, it's easy to say that. They always dwell on this, 6 losses by 7 points or less, but as some other people have pointed out, that was also the case with Jacksonville and a couple other teams. And I don't know if you can, view them as potential playoff teams quite yet. So, but I do think that the Eagles have enough talent there that if they just fill in the 1 or 2 holes, I think they can be a relevant team. I mean, I don't know that I wouldn't go as far as, Howie was saying that, that 10-6 isn't good enough. We want to get to one of his top 2 seeds. I think that's a little bit of a reach, but considering you haven't been in the playoffs in 3 years, I would think like a wild card berth would be a nice progress.
Right. I kind of said that yesterday, that I don't think they're close to being a Super Bowl contender, but they do seem like they are inching towards, and this is almost every year for just about 25 teams in the league. Everyone seems like they're right by being a wild card team, but he kind of indicated today that 10-6 is not good enough and that we don't want Band-Aid type of players. So you wonder, with the lack of cap flexibility, that's one of the things that Howie has excelled at is free agency and these cap moves. You wonder if he's going to be able to do that with where they are cap-wise.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to add a whole lot as far as free agency goes, I don't think, but maybe one big player would help, whether it's Alshon Jeffries or even Deshaun Jackson. I don't think that corner. I think they'd be better off drafting a guy. They've tried the free agent route there for like a number of years now, and it hasn't worked out. So I would rather see them draft a young corner to pair with Jalen Mills and build that way. But they don't have a whole lot of flexibility, at least as of right now. But as you mentioned, Howie's a pretty creative guy when it comes to the salary cap, so I wouldn't be surprised if they, can dump some salaries here and there and to maybe have a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah, it seemed that he actually called the corners out as a Band-Aid. He said, look what we've done at corner. So maybe that was the first little insight of them finally realizing we've got to go better because, the last time, Dave, that they drafted corners was the last time they were good when they got Lito and Sheldon in that draft. They haven't drafted corners since.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I think Jalen Mills was drafted last year, but not too.
I mean, relatively high profile. Mills was what?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's true. And I don't know, what was Eric Rowe, a second rounder?
Yes, Rowe was a second rounder, and his answer on Rowe today was kind of bizarre, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, why would you determine that after like a guy who has played 8 games and looked pretty good, by the way, and now all of a sudden you determine that you're not going to offer him an extension in like 3 years from now? So what's the point of keeping him? That makes no sense at all. And as it turned out, that was one of probably their biggest mistake of the preseason, at least, was getting rid of Rowe, because he's having a pretty good year with New England now. Once he got used to Bill Belichick's way of doing things. So, I thought it seems odd that you would give up on a second-round pick so quick like that. I guess, but maybe Schwartz just wasn't that high on him, and they just thought it was best to move on. But
that's what it sounded like, right?
Mistake.
That it sounded like that Schwartz must have told them, "Look, this guy doesn't fit the scheme we do. So if you can get rid of him, go ahead and do it. You have my blessing."
Yeah, which I don't quite get. I mean, you got a kid who's 22, 23 years old, showing plenty of upside. It seemed like last year he did anyway. I don't know how he got so far in the doghouse. He's not, by all accounts, he's a pretty good kid. Grounded, mature, hard worker. So that was a very puzzling move to me.
Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic City. He mentioned that he didn't have a DeLorean to be able to go back in time. I guess it was funny because he mentioned that. He also was asked whether or not he would have, in fact, made the moves to cut Jackson and trade McCoy had he been in charge. But wasn't his DeLorean comment almost answering that, hey, I wouldn't have got rid of those guys. I can't go back in time and bring them back, but I wouldn't have got rid of them. It almost seems like that's what he was saying.
Yeah, he probably didn't want to come out. He just didn't want to come out and say it, but yeah, it's clear. Although I'm a little puzzled by the Deshaun Jackson decision, though, because from what I remember, Howie was still in charge at that time, and I would think that he had a pretty good, fair amount of say in that. Chip made it sound like it was his decision, but it seemed to me that was Howie was still in charge of personnel back then, so I don't know how he can automatically blame that on Chip.
Well, this is where the Roseman story is so hard to because he's been the GM, he's been in charge in terms of title, but during Andy's tenure, I think most of us realized that Andy was in charge of that draft room, right, until at least 2011.
Right.
And then the first couple years at Chip, I guess we don't really know, but it seemed like he took the bullet for Marcus Smith, so maybe he was in charge. But really definitively, the only 2 drafts that we think Howie was in charge of actually went pretty well. That 12 draft when they got Fletcher Cox and Michael Kendricks and Vinnie Curry, and then this past draft was so far looks pretty good. Other than that, everything's a little murky.
Yeah, that's true. It's really tough to determine exactly how much responsibility he had and, how much of a say he had in that draft room. That's why I'm still skeptical about this one coming up too. Joe Douglas is supposed to be the guy that has all the say, but, I can't help but think that Howie's going to have his input, as well as Doug Peterson, which I'm not quite getting. It doesn't seem like Doug has any power at all here. And that it seems like they just hand him players and say, here's where you're going to have. Go ahead and coach them. I can't believe that he would have traded Sam Bradford if he had had any say in that. Because up until he was traded, he was making plans for Bradford to be a starter. It just seems like Doug is kind of like I don't want to say yes man, but I guess he's kind of like the guy that they just hand him the keys and say go ahead and drive it. I don't know if he has any power there really, which is kind of puzzling to me being a head coach.
That's what it sounded like today was that, how much input does Doug have? Oh, he asked a lot of questions and there's a lot, but we don't really let him say anything. But maybe that's what the Eagles were looking for. Maybe that's why Doug, in fact, got the job, because he was not going to be, fighting them on personnel decisions.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, after going through the Chip Kelly debacle, maybe they wanted a guy who isn't going to flex his muscles, so to speak, who's just going to go ahead with the crowd and do what he does best, which I guess is coaching. So, yeah, that's probably a fair point.
Hey, do you anticipate some high-profile guys that might have to be cut because of cost, or do you think there's going to be a lot of shakeup with some high-profile players that have been here for a while? Guys like Kelsey. Who else would be? He mentioned today that he wants Peters back, so I would anticipate that. But are there some guys that you've maybe targeted that might not be here that have been a pretty big part of this team the last couple of years?
Well, I kind of thought Kelsey at first, but Howie was pretty complimentary about him today. So that makes me think that maybe they'll kind of restructure some things and that Jason will still be the center. I'm kind of wondering about Connor Barwin. It doesn't seem like he fits very well in that 4-3. Although I was talking to Connor this past week, and he was, he pointed out that he was also not only was he switching position, but he was also switching sides. Where he was a left outside linebacker, and then he was a right defensive end going against everybody's left tackle, and he thought that might have been contributed to his lack of numbers, I guess. But Connor is very, I don't know if it should weigh in it or not, but he's a very big part of the community. Through his work with special projects and building parks and his charity work, and I would think if he could find a way to, he definitely wants to stay, and he counts Philadelphia as his home and really wants to make it a big part of his life, and so I think if there's a way that they can restructure some things or something to keep him, they should do it, but it sounds to me like maybe they're ready to move on from him.
Yeah, and you wonder, I know Marcus Smith has been kind of the punching bag since he's been drafted, but you wonder if was given more of an opportunity. Is he ready to kind of overtake Connor in terms of play on the field?
Nah, I think he stinks, to be honest with you.
All righty then.
I really do.
Well, I mean, he seemed like he was very limited this year in terms of his playing time, but he seemed like at least he was way far ahead advanced from where he was when they drafted him.
Well, you were about as bottom. He was pretty much at the bottom when they drafted him, so there really was no way to go but up. But he shows flashes here and there, but he's like somebody else pointed out, he's like one of those guys who's really good in games that don't mean anything. He had a really good game against Dallas the other day when they were playing their backups. And I don't know, I was really disappointed in Vinny Curry's performance.
Me too.
I mean, you were, like we were saying in the beginning of the year, we were expecting him to have his big breakout year, and he was a non-factor. I was more disappointed maybe in him than I was in Marcus Smith, to be honest with you, because they gave him that big extension.
No doubt. I agree with you, Dave. I thought Curry was just going to be perfect in this defense and that he was going to be all over the place. Now, did he say he was kind of hurt for half the year or something? Was that something that came out after the season was over?
I didn't hear that. I mean, a convenient excuse to make. I don't remember him ever being on an injury report or being, listed as questionable or doubtful or anything. So I don't know what the reason was for his lack of production.
Well, a lot, of course, every offseason always, has a lot of questions, and we'll see that Howie Roseman and Joe Douglas and the Eagles moving forward here. Not a lot of money in free agency. Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic City joining us here on the Sports Bash. All right, Dave, all season's here. Get to work.
All right. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.